Hello, so here we are on question 2. Question 2 will always ask you to look at source A and source B, so you've got to compare both sources, and that's emphasized for you again here. And this will always be a summary question. Great news. Well, that's going to present us with our first problem, as I'll show you in the mark scheme. But before we get there, the number of marks tells you how long you have in this exam. So 1 mark equals approximately 1.5 minutes. So that means you've got 12 minutes to answer this, and the examiners treat that as 1 page and 2 pages, and that's it. You can see that there aren't that many lines per page. It's much fewer lines than you get on a page of A4. So how are you going to get all 8 marks? Well, again, the mark scheme will tell us. Okay, if we look at assessment objective 1, there are 2 key skills that the examiner's after. One is they want us to find explicit, in other words, obvious information and ideas, and then they want us to find the implicit information ideas, which is reading between the lines. Well, that presents us with our first problem, and here it is. The question does not ask us to infer. It just asks you to summarize the facts. So logically, you would just say what the factual differences are between Eddie and Henry and the 2 sources, but that won't get you into the top band. So remember, question 2 will always ask you to infer. So whichever year you're taking this exam, that will always be the same. You have to read between the lines and find out those implicit differences, the ones which aren't obvious. Okay, well, the next thing you need to know is that English exams are really difficult to mark. And one of the reasons for that is what I will judge as being implicit understanding will be different from another English teacher, and what that English teacher understands might be different from another one. And the examiner doesn't really help us out too much. So if we look at this section here, they give us an indicative standard. The examiner is really cheating here. What they should do is give us a full model answer, but they don't. They chicken out of this. Instead, they say this indicative standard is not a model answer. In other words, they're going to leave it up to your examiner to decide if your answer is good enough for full marks. Well, straight away you can see the problem, because if you take 4 English teachers in your school, they'll probably give your answer 4 different marks. That's just the way English works. It's not because your teachers aren't any good. It's because we all have different opinions about what good looks like. Okay, and also this, it says, is not a complete response. So the examiners are going to really struggle in their first year to know what to give full marks to. It doesn't exemplify particular content. Well, that's quite good news, because it means the examiner will accept any content that you find from the text. They're not looking for a right answer. So that's good news. Anything that you see as a difference is going to gain you marks. But it is an indication of the standard of the level. So what I'm going to do is copy the level 4 answer here, and then I'm going to look at the level 3 answer and try and take you through what the differences are, so we can get inside the examiner's head. Okay, well, what I've done is restructured the paragraphs that were in the mark scheme into their 4 parts, and you can see in band 3 and band 4 your answer must be in 4 parts. Let's see what those 4 parts look like. Well, you make a comment about one extract, in this case the extract on Eddie. Then you have an explanation about what your quotation shows. Then you look at the other extract. Here the information is about Henry, and you have another explanation about what the quotation shows. Well, so far so helpful. That's band 4. But unfortunately, band 3 is exactly the same. Look, you talk about Eddie, then you talk about Henry, so you're looking at both extracts, and the yellows here are both the explanations about what the quotations show. So I have to keep comparing looking at quotations from each extract and saying something about each one. That's going to get me into band 3. Okay, well, what's different? Well, let's take a look. Well, if we look at the highlights I've put in green, you'll see they're the same in both answers. So we have to say that Eddie is cheeky, and we repeat that in the level 3 answer. Henry is formal and respectful, and here Henry is formal and respectful. So, well, what on earth is the examiner looking for to say that band 4 is a better answer than band 3? So here the examiner gives us an important clue. In the band 4, they take the same quotation, mocking voice, but they ask you to make 2 points about it. In band 3, you take that same quotation, the mocking voice, but you make only 1 point about it. Then when we look at the other extract about Henry, you make 2 points, he's formal and distant, whereas in band 3, you make, this is 3 points, and in band 3 you only make 2. So a simple rule of thumb is that you need to make more than 1 point for each quotation in order to get into band 4. But those aren't long detailed points, they're simply a tiny little bit of extra information. It might be just a single adjective. The next thing that the examiner is looking for is really a gut instinct. Really, it's quite a shame, this, because the meaning of emphasizing and showing is very, very similar. But what the examiner is saying is if you use the word showing, that's, if you like, bog standard, unadventurous vocabulary, and they expect most students to be able to use it. And so they're after a slightly more developed vocabulary, even though it means the same thing. So you're simply going to use the word emphasizing. Well, it's a childish difference. It doesn't really mean anything. But the great news is if you use the word emphasizing, the examiner is going to want to give you more marks. Doesn't mean you understand the exam any better. It doesn't mean you're any better as an English student, but it does mean you're better at interpreting this exam. It's sad and dispiriting. It's not what English should be about, but never mind that. I'm trying to teach you to get 100%, and simply using that vocabulary will force the examiner to think, oh, should I put this candidate in band 4 rather than band 3? Okay, now there are a couple of other differences that distinguish the band 4 answer from the band 3 answer, and I've shown these to you in the italics here. So one simple difference is that you give 2 reasons in your explanation. Here it emphasizes the close relationship and it emphasizes the good humor in their relationship, whereas in the band 3 answer you only have 1 explanation. He is not afraid of him. Now the second difference is that in the second explanation in the band 4 you make a separate point, something entirely new. Here it's about the character's status, whereas in the band 3 you really refer to the same sort of idea, not being afraid and being somewhat afraid. So the examiner is looking for you having different ideas in your explanation. Now, of course, the other thing that you desperately want to know is, well, how much should I write? You know, what's going to get me full marks? How many quotations do I need? How many differences? And unfortunately, the examiners are completely silent on this issue. They don't tell you. Well, so the short answer is you've got 12 minutes to do this question, and you keep finding differences for the full 12 minutes. Once those 12 minutes are up, that's it. You finish the question, bang, and you move on to the next one. So my guide goes into this question in much more depth. It shows you model answers, but it gives you this handy hint of 9 things that you need to get right. Highlight the keywords in the question so that you're comparing the right things. Many students don't do this and end up comparing the wrong thing. Roughly 1/5 of students don't get the marks because they're comparing the wrong stuff. So bring a highlighter into the exam, highlight what exactly you have to look at. Okay, in my second point, you want to make the examiner think that you're looking at implicit meanings, in other words, that you're inferring. So the easy way to do that is always start with this sentence. There are similar things about, and then you insert whatever the key words of the questions are, in the two extracts, but they have a different emphasis. And do you remember emphasis was that word that was taking you into band 4? So as soon as you write that, it tells the examiner you've seen things that are different and things that are similar. That shows that you've got a great understanding of both extracts. You might not have a great understanding of both extracts, but the examiner doesn't know that because of the way you've started. Quote something from the oldest extract and use so or which suggests or which implies to show that you are inferring something from this quotation. So implies is another word like emphasizing that shows you're moving beyond showing. It means exactly the same thing, but the examiner is going to be more impressed because you're not just using the word shows. As we've seen, the examiner is also interested in your choice of vocabulary. So if you choose these connectives, while, whereas, or in contrast, or on the other hand, you'll simply impress them with your vocabulary and they'll want to give you higher marks. That sadly is just the way the exam works. Then you write about how this is different in the next extract with a quotation, which you'll nearly always be able to find. Then you move to a completely new point. Quote something from the oldest extract. Again, you're going to use which suggests or implies, or indeed emphasizes, to show that you are inferring something. Now this is an interesting trick. Then you can rank your differences, and the easiest way to do that is to give it an adjective. So you can say it's the main difference, or it's the most dramatic difference, or it's the most significant difference, or indeed the worst difference. State this in your sentence. Now the reason that you'll use an adjective to describe the kind of difference is this criteria here, which will always be in the mark scheme. Statements show perceptive differences between the text, and again here it is perceptive. Well, there's nothing here to help the examiner say, well, what does perceptive look like? Well, one way is to give more than one explanation, but the other way is to rank those explanations with that idea, you know, the main difference or the most significant difference. That shows that you're no longer just being clear and relevant, you're reaching towards being perceptive. It forces the examiner to put you in the higher mark range. And what's interesting about this is they're not judging to see if you're correct. You know, the examiner might think that the main difference between the texts is something different to you, but they'll reward you for arguing that you think the main difference is blah, blah, blah. So you can't lose with this technique. It's not as though the mark scheme has got a main technique in here or a most significant technique. They simply don't. They're just looking to be impressed by your thought processes. Okay, and then as I have said, you've got 12 minutes for this question, and the examiners don't tell you how much to write in that time. They refuse to give us a model answer. So you just keep writing for those 12 minutes. Well, why shouldn't you keep going to 14 minutes, for example, just to get the extra difference in? If you've been watching my videos, you will know that the marks are easiest at the beginning of the question. So 2 minutes spent at the end of this question might only get you 1 mark, whereas 2 minutes on the next question might get you 4 or 5, because they're easy marks that students at D and C grades, or level 3 and 4, are invited to get. So spend those 2 minutes on the next question. Don't overrun. Don't waste time writing a conclusion. The examiners aren't looking for a structured, conceptualized answer where you sum up the differences. Instead, they're looking for the number of differences that you can find. So no conclusion is necessary. Well, I hope you like what you've heard, that you fully understand this. The only way to test that, of course, is to try the answers yourself. If you want to answer the questions on the specimen paper that I've just shown you, by all means do that. Post them in to me, and you know, if I'll mark a few. Anyway, good luck with your revision. If you'd like to know more, my revision guide will be out very, very soon. and it tells you exactly how to get 100%. If you like the video, please subscribe, and good luck in your exams.